Hi everyone, and welcome back to video 2. I'm Shannon Brenton, the co-founder here at Keto Industries. And on this short video, guys, I'm pleased to speak with you about ketosis, surprisingly. And I'm going to cover a lot of the questions that I get asked. So things like, what is ketosis? What's nutritional ketosis? Is this anything like ketoacidosis that my grandmother died of due to uncontrolled type 1 diabetes? What's a ketone? More importantly, is this something I can do safely? How do I get into ketosis? What's the history of it? And more importantly, is it something that my doctor and or my specialist will approve of me being on? So just to kick it off, a ketone is simply a referral to any of the 3 water-soluble compounds which are produced in your liver. That's it, normal metabolic process. And this process occurs in times when there's either significant and severe restriction of calories, i.e. fasting, or in times when there is significant or severe restriction of carbohydrate, okay? And in this, our body goes into a state due to low blood sugar or due to low calories that it needs to look for an alternative source of fuel. At this time, the body will start to oxidize or break down your fatty acids from your stored fat stores and convert them into ketones in the liver. Now, nutritional ketosis is simply the activation of this process via putting ourselves into a state where our body has no choice but to start producing these. So the difference here to understand between ketosis and a ketoacidosis, so an uncontrolled diabetic complication, is that we are actually forcing it here through a hypoglycemic response. So we're dropping our blood sugars through less ingestion of sugar to a point where we're forcing our body to find another alternative fuel substrate to use for energy, okay? In a ketoacidosis, these poor people aren't producing insulin or haven't injected enough. And what happens is that this massive rise in blood sugar has nowhere to go. The body knows it's damaging. It produces masses of ketones. And when I mean masses, I'm talking upwards of 10, sometimes even upwards of 20 and 25 millimoles per litre versus the 0.5 millimoles per litre that we're wanting to induce for a nutritional state of ketosis. So very, very different. One of them is a complication that will kill you. The other one is something that we're doing for health benefits. Now, why ketones? You got to understand, guys, that ketones sort of operate a bit like a macronutrient. So we've got proteins, carbs, and fats. All of these supply calories, and all those calories can be effectively used for energy. Ketones work like a 4th macronutrient, okay? And what they do is they have a function within what we call the Krebs cycle, where our energy is produced in our cells, where they increase or convert down to one of the intermediates in the Krebs cycle known as acetyl-CoA, where they're used, just like sugar, to produce ATP for energy. Now, I'm going to get into the hows and the whys on the next video as to why you would want to do this, in which conditions this is a variable state that you may find favorable. But that's the long and the short of what you need to know about what a nutritional ketosis is. It's just about having a level of ketones that are operational for energy manufacture, the end. And they have very specific places in which they will work very well for you. Now, it's imperative for me that you understand that ketosis, while it's very fatty now and a bit cool, bit in the moment, what you're actually looking at here, and what we're talking about, is actually a medically induced intervention. Okay, it's a medically induced state, going back right back to ancient Greece, where it was used to control the early signs of seizures and epilepsy at a time when it didn't even have a name. So this is at a time where a seizure, you can imagine, some bloke fitting on the floor, was considered to be a wrath of God and quite supernatural. And it was founded back then, just through trial and error, I'm sure, that a fasting period, so complete abstinence from food or drink, would help to cure these symptoms. And this would happen for, believe it or not, up to 25 days. So it's a significant hardcore state of ketosis, and it was pretty pivotal in controlling seizures at a time when there were no meds. Now, when we move forward into the early 1900s, the ketogenic diet had a lot of research happening at the time in France and England and America, all around its control in refractory epilepsy is referring to epilepsy which is not controlled appropriately by pharmaceuticals, particularly in children. So where they had used 2 or 3 different forms of like bromides and different chemical agents back then that had been ineffective at controlling the symptoms of seizure disorders, they would then go onto a ketogenic diet and use it with, believe it or not, more success than the drugs in controlling the symptoms. And nutritional ketosis was hardcore back then. It was a 90% fat diet, so very different than just fasting, high fat diet, very low carbohydrate, 4%, and 6% protein, just enough to allow for growth, particularly in these young children that they were testing this dietary protocol on at the time. And it controlled the symptoms so well that for the next 15 odd years, it became the prime treatment of epilepsy and seizure disorders. And it wasn't until Dilantin was founded in the late 30s, our primary anticonvulsant drug of today, that the attention went from the nutritional deviation and treatment of this condition with a diet versus the pharmaceutical intervention and treatment of this condition. So that's neither here nor there, but where we are now is a very watered down state compared with what it was. It started at this hardcore, let's fast for up to 3 weeks. Then we went into a very, very high fat dietary protocol with little to no carbs and fats, which forced these ketones to be produced. And these days we find ourselves sort of in the watered down Atkins sort of modified protocols, where it's sort of more like 60-65% fat, more protein to allow for the lifestyles of busy people, and enough carbohydrate to keep us in ketosis, but enough to also allow us to feel slightly functional mentally. So ketosis itself is a medically induced state. It's one of those things that a lot of people now jump onto, because obviously when we break down and oxidize fat to produce ketones, we lose weight. And we all know how much people, particularly you ladies, love to lose weight. And it's become very fad orientated because of that fact. As these videos roll through, I'm going to go right through how and why this is the case, all the other indications and actions from ketones, and I'm going to start discussing with you guys the benefits that we have these days of exogenous sources of ketones that you can actually ingest that will allow you to biohack all the benefits of ketosis diets without necessarily having the same rate of carbohydrate restriction to allow it to function. So I look forward to seeing you guys on video 3. Please keep your comments coming. I've enjoyed hearing them, and I'll make sure that I keep your questions answered in the following videos. Till then, guys, have a great day. Bye.